time. Hello, Pete. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We've been talking a lot about certain big moments in both campaigns, okay, and in the run-up to the election, and how they are kind of germane to Western Pennsylvania especially. One of the things I was doing was looking at different moments, and one of them I think happened for Democrats right here in Western Pennsylvania. Can you speak to the span of time when Kamala Harris decided to, in the run-up to the debate with Donald Trump, to bunker down at the William Penn, to stay in downtown Pittsburgh and kind of study up on what she needed to do headed into the debate? Because I think it served as one of the high watermarks for Democrats. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think part of why she was so clear and focused in the debate is the time she was spending around people in Western PA that really helped kind of ground her outlook on what's on people's minds. Look, I've been in the political process often, obviously not at her level, but I've seen how it can kind of isolate you. And it can, if you let it, it can really push you into a space where it's harder and harder to see kind of what people are hearing on the ground. She's always been big on trying to cut through that. I remember I was involved in her debate preparations 4 years ago when they asked me to stand in for Mike Pence in that VP debate. And every time we were talking through statistics and arguments, she would always be saying, okay, but what does this mean for folks at home? How's this going to make them better off or change their lives? And so I think this was a way to do that kind of in real life on the ground. And I'm sure that the conversations with people she sought out in the area around Pittsburgh are part of why she had such a successful debate performance at the end of that stretch.
Pete Buttigieg joining right here, KDK. And it's not unlike where you are and where you're from. What are those things in Rust Belt cities or places like Pittsburgh or places like South Bend or places like Cleveland that do make it so important in this election?
Well, first of all, my experience is people don't expect you to have all the answers, but they want to know that you care about them. They want to know who you're focused on. And so a big part of her message is, look, the only economic policy promise Donald Trump actually kept was the one about tax cuts for the rich. She's focused on making sure that taxes are more fair, that we have a government that's actually working for working people. And I think that's a message that's especially going to resonate in places like the industrial Midwest, places like where I grew up, and with my neighbors here in Michigan, where I live now. I think it's important to back that up with plans and facts. Not that everybody's picking through the details of your policy white papers, but they want to know what you're actually proposing to do. And that's where I think the comparison between what she laid out to try to build more houses, very specific policy proposal, compared to what he's laid out, which is mainly tariffs that we estimate are going to cost families $3,000 to $4,000 a year if you actually went through with it. Those are the kinds of things that I think really make a difference in everyday life versus some of the more kind of culture war stuff or the things that get all the clicks on the internet, but don't really go to what everyday life is like for us where we live. And I think the more we can get the campaign to be a little less online and a little more grounded and wait a minute, it really matters who's in charge for our communities, for our economy. I think that's the territory that she wants to have these debates on. And I think it's really important as a product of the Midwest to speak to communities like ours that have been through a lot of ups and downs over the last 30, 40 years about what the difference is and what she's looking to do.
It's interesting you say that, Pete, because I said months and months and months ago that I think this is going to be an election cycle where we bring up our pocketbook, then we go through all these other topics and all these other situations, and then when we go to walk into the voting booth, it'll come back to the economy and our pocketbook again. Would you agree to that we're going to vote with our wallet more than ever?
I tend to think so. I think that's where some of the biggest contrasts are. But it means, we have work to do. Like, we got to make sure we don't see a rewriting of history by the Trump campaign. I think he's tried to get people to forget the manufacturing recession that happened on his watch even before COVID. And I think, we have work to do to make sure people hear the difference in our plans. I'm not saying that's the only issue. Obviously, abortion is a huge issue. A lot of women are really concerned about the fact that Donald Trump took away their right to choose. That's the only other big promise I think that he kept. But he said he was going to eliminate the right to choose, and then he did it. And I think that's an important issue. I think some folks are concerned about just the kind of state of our democracy. It's why I see a lot of people from the national security side, including a lot of Trump administration officials, coming out now and saying, "Don't vote for this guy." His own chief of staff, his Secretary of Defense, and generals who served under him who talk about their concerns. about what would happen if he came to power, especially since he said that he thinks the biggest problem facing America isn't China or Russia, but that Americans who disagree with him. He calls them the enemy from within. So I think all of that matters, but if I was picking the one thing that matters most, I agree with you. I would absolutely go to economic issues, how we're going to keep the jobs coming back to the United States, how we're going to keep up this manufacturing construction boom. I mean, look, when I got into politics, you were not seeing, equipment operators making six figures. Something really important is happening right now in terms of the construction and factory growth. We've got to keep that going.
Well, let me ask you this, and this is the last question for you, Pete, and I appreciate the way that you speak, and I appreciate your appearances because they're not canned answers. You seem to speak from the heart and candidly and give the real on things. So I'm going to ask you this straight up, and don't expect a canned answer. Kamala Harris is better than Donald Trump on jobs and the economy. Why do you think so, or why are you pressing forward with that notion?
Well, first of all, she's not focused on tax cuts for the rich, right? Again, that's the only economic promise he actually kept. I think that's huge. And blowing up the deficit just to cut taxes for rich people, I think was the wrong recipe for our economy. I think what she's proposing to do speaks a lot more to what we actually need in our everyday lives. When she talks about trying to get us, things like paid family leave and a child tax credit. That's not just family policy. That's also economic policy. Every American would have paid family leave right now if we could get Senate Republicans to stop blocking it. And I would love to see that happen. Same thing with what she's saying again about housing, making housing more affordable. So I just think it's a difference in focus. It's a difference in who you're trying to take care of. And I think it's one that really comes through. But look, I know folks get information from different sources. Not everybody's hearing our message. That's why I think it's really important for us to bring that message out everywhere. And you're going to see that from her, right? Like Donald Trump wasn't even willing to go on CNBC or 60 Minutes. She sat down on Fox News. It was a tough interview, took tough questions, but I think she gave a really strong, tough, and smart performance. And I think you'll continue to see her with Republicans campaigning on the trail with her, not because they changed their mind and suddenly became Democrats, but just because they think the difference is so clear this time around.
Mayor Pete, you're a good man. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and we'll talk down the road.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.